All right. I think we're ready. We'll call the Finance Committee meeting of 5 May to order. All members are present and accounted for. First item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I think we have what is it, an FT? I don't know where it is, how we find it, but is it FT5? Is that what I remember?
FT6.
Is that on yesterday's agenda?
No, it was going to be amended to add it to the agenda, but you guys voted to wait till today.
So does the committee want to amend the agenda so we can take care of that? It's, I think it has some urgency for something to do with the pandemic, but I can't remember.
No, it's the tree money. They have a,
the tree money.
They have to trim or cut down, and they need the funding to do it. They're out of their funds in their budget. Okay. And this is coming from contingency. I think if we had more time, we could find $4,000 in another department's budget, but we're working on that fourth quarter transfer between departments right now, and we don't have that yet. So we're recommending you take it from contingency.
Jody, this is an amount that's going to be
reimbursed. Yes.
So when it's reimbursed, it should be reimbursed to the same contingency.
It does. When we get a revenue, it doesn't post against an expense account. We put it in miscellaneous revenues in the general fund, which serves to reimburse us for what we did, but it will not reduce an expense.
So before we discuss it, I think we need to see it.
And vote to add it.
There's a discussion to amend the agenda to add this FT. Can I have a motion?
Move to amend the agenda to include FT, whatever the number.
620.
6-20.
6-20.
And we have it to put on the screen once you get to it.
Second.
All right. With that a motion and amended agenda, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The agenda is amended. Shall we take that up as our first order of business?
Okay.
Good day.
All right. So will Julian be able to show it to us? Yes. All right.
So this has got money coming from our contingency account. We'll move those budgetary appropriations to supplies and other in OEP so that they can do this tree work they need to do. And after they're done with the work, they're going to bill the property owners the $4,000. And that $4,000 will go back into the general fund.
Is there any discussion?
Where are these trees, or where is this tree?
Your yard.
I got a couple that could come down, no problem.
I do not know the location of the tree. I don't know if we want to try to get Jackie on the line to talk about it.
I don't know either. I'll text Jackie and see if I can get a quick response.
You know, for a transfer, I probably don't need to know that, but I would like to know it at some point.
Okay.
We can vote as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I'll get the answer and get back to you as soon as she gets on.
That's fine.
Yeah, is there a way to put this back into the contingency once it's reimbursed? I'm not comfortable with it going into the general fund. We're taking it out of contingency.
So the contingency fund is an expenditure account, and it's in the finance non-allocated department. And when we want to spend $1 out of the city, we have to appropriate, give the spending authority for that. So even if these, if somebody had given us the $4,000 in advance, we would come to you and say, we have $4,000 donation to do this tree work, but we would still ask you to increase the appropriation authority so that we can do the work. So there's a difference between the revenue source and the appropriation authority to spend it. Now, we're not asking you to add appropriation authority to the budget because we have it in the contingency fund and we'll seek reimbursement later. So when this comes back, it would come back. The reimbursement would come back as revenue and reimburse the general fund, but it would not lower an expense account.
But Jody, doesn't this contingency fund fall to fund balance?
If it's
at the
not
end of this
spent,
year?
it would fall to fund balance.
Right.
Either way, the general fund balance will end up in the same position.
Right. Sheila?
I guess I'm thinking about how it's to be used in the future, and not just for this particular circumstance. We take money out of contingency, and then it ends up in the general fund.
It is already in the general fund. What we would do is we take it out of one department in the general fund and move it to another department within the general fund, in this case OEP, so that they can spend it through their accounts.
So Sheila, the contingency fund is not a revolving fund.
And it's
At
not,
the end of the year, anything that's unspent falls to fund balance in surplus. Next year, in this year's budget, we also have budgeted a new contingency fund amount. I don't know what it is, but, and that will be used for contingencies in fiscal 21.
I would like to clarify that it's not a fund, and that's the misnomer, and we probably shouldn't have that word on there. It is an account within the finance department's non-allocated budget items. And we're moving that budgetary authority out of there to a department so that it can be spent through the appropriate department.
And I understand all of that.
Okay.
But I don't understand why we would make a decision to not put it back where it was, because then we have greater options for using it, I think.
Okay, so
in fund.
So and you are correct, if the property owner paid us first, we would come to you and say, we have extra revenue that we didn't anticipate. So therefore increase OEP's budget by $4,000 to compensate. And therefore that $4,000 in the contingency fund would be available to spend on something else. So I understand what you're saying there. But in no point would we ever record the $4,000 that's coming in as a credit back to an expense account. And I know that's kind of confusing, but so I see your point. Normally we would increase the spending authority and increase the revenue source, but this case, that $4,000 appropriation authority would not be available for something else because we are using it for this. In another case, if we had time to scour the other departments, we could remove $4,000 from another department and move it to OEP, and they could use that money for the tree money.
So Jody, if the trees were cut down next week and we got a check the week after, something would happen with that check. If the trees were cut down next week and we didn't get a check until after July 1st, the beginning of the next budget year, does something different happen with that $4,000 check?
So that's an accounting question. If it's soon after year end and I knew it was coming, I would accrue it back into this year as a revenue. Right. If it came in September or October, I would not be able to include it in my FY20 numbers.
A couple of pieces of clarification. The trees have already been removed and the check's already been received for $4,000. The properties are on College Avenue and on King George Street. The trees were removed in late 2019 and payment was made. So now we just need to get the appropriation into the OEP.
All right, so budget. In that case, I would say this is not the right way we should have this fund transfer. I did not know the $4,000 was already here. If that's the case, then I should have known about that, and we would increase the OEP budget and increase the revenues to compensate, as I was explaining to Sheila. If the check is already here, which we did not know about, the property owners will reimburse the city for the tree removal. If they've already given us the funds, then this is not the proper way to show this.
So this isn't needed at all then?
Apparently, I don't know who just told David that information, but if that's happened in the meantime while they were waiting for this paperwork to go through, then we could reconfigure this to show increase to, we do it, it'd be a SA, supplemental appropriation. And we would increase OEP's budget and increase the other revenue in the general fund to compensate. This should be.
And we don't have to remove anything from the contingency line item.
Correct. Now we can redo this now. If that's true, and I can confirm that $4,000 check came in, we can reconfigure this and bring it back to you tomorrow.
Then, Mr. Chair, I say we take no action on this until the finance director can be informed of what's really going on with this.
What I say is kudos to you, Sheila, for asking the right question. And you're right. I think we should not take any. I think it's going to be withdrawn and something else resubmitted. So we can move on to the rest of the agenda.
Maybe it was my 8 o'clock cup of coffee.
Yeah.
All right. So I think on our agenda for today is to go back to all of the actions that the committee needs to take to vote on its recommendations. I believe we have voted to accept fees and fines. There were some amendments. Jody talked about one of them this morning, that we need some legislation for one of the fees, the too early fees, but that we voted with that amendment to accept both of those. Am I correct, Takia?
Yes.
All right. We have not voted on the capital fund or the CIP, nor have we voted on any of the appropriations budget by department, any of the schedules that are attached to the ordinance, the appropriation ordinance 01620, which we started to discuss yesterday and got into some immediate philosophical and accounting discussions. But with the consent of the committee, I'd like to go through today and have motions and votes on all of those things that we have cleared up and get those into the minutes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right.
What are we talking about?
Well, I would propose that the first thing we go to, I hope it's not terribly controversial, is the capital budget and the CIP, which are in our binder books. For me, it's under attachment, tab B, and for me, it has both the Davenport report and then the proposed capital budget fiscal 2011 and the capital improvement program fiscal 22 through 26. David, this morning you gave a very nice presentation to the fact, and I know I've seen it, but I can't find it. Is there a way you can send that?
Sure. That was the one that Marcia and I tag teamed on a couple weeks ago for the finance committee. That was the same presentation, but I'll send that to you.
Okay, I thought I'd seen it, but when I went back to try to find it, and Takia and I were looking for it this morning, and we need to get that. If we can take one slight digression, this notion that was raised by Rob Savage about some kind of a lockbox or treasure trove or something, some place where all of these things are available in one place. I think that's going to be quite helpful. I started working on the report to the council last night and early this morning, and one of the things that I put in there was a link that I hope we have established for all of the PowerPoint presentations we got from each of the departments on their performance measures and benchmarks and then discussion of their budget and so forth. I mean, we could do that in hard copy in the committee report, but I think that's a lot of paper. And so I would think that a link would be appropriate. I also think we need a link for the rate setting for the water, sewer, and stormwater management. Those are good PowerPoint presentations. All of the things that we've gotten as briefings, David, the briefing you gave again this morning and you gave us at the work session with the budget for the financial projections. I learned a lot listening to that over again. I missed a lot the first time. That may or may not be good news for you, but I took a lot of notes while you were doing that. But I think all of those things, my sense would be we give it as some kind of a link for the rest of the council, along with the additions that Jody and Katie have given. I'll get to you in a second, Fred. Have given us with the 4 batches of line item detail. It's putting that in a link rather than putting it in paper in the report. Fred has his hand up. I know he's going to commend me on such a great set of ideas.
Well, I do commend you, Mr. Chair, but that isn't why I had my hand up.
Okay, thank you.
I still haven't gotten hard copies of the PowerPoint presentations. I've asked for a hard copy of every single one of them and haven't gotten a single one of them. Also,
who would you like to deliver you those hard copies? How would, I mean,
put them in my box. I go down.
Well, I don't really, I'm going to have to find somebody on staff to print all of it and do it.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot.
A hard copy and everything.
Fred, the Sierra Club has taken up a collection and they're buying you a printer and paper.
Well, I've asked for these all along, so there's no reason why somebody ought to have to do 5 or 10 of them one time.
Do you keep paper copies of everything?
I'm sorry?
I didn't know that he wanted paper copies of the PowerPoint presentations. I've put paper copies of everything else in there.
Also,
The answer to that question was yes, and so does Ross, but I have my own printers, so I've been printing them out.
well, you want to print me out a copy?
You mean like I had to over the weekend? No, not particularly. My printing bill and paper bill is pretty high.
Also, I was wondering if we could get, before we consider the department, each department's budget request, if I could get a salary list for city employees. We typically get that, and I haven't gotten that this year.
Oh yeah, that brings up, we normally also get the schedule, the pay level schedule, and we approve that. If I have it, I haven't seen it, but normally we take action on approving the new pay schedule. And it seems to me there's one other thing that we do as a matter of course with the budget, but that one for sure, we get the A's and the P's and all of those at their various levels and steps.
I will say that you do typically get that, but since this budget is built with the assumption that the COLA will take effect in January, we would not propose that new pay schedule to you until January. So if that plan changes, we're going to have to give you the new, we have it prepared, but we wouldn't give it to you for approval until we know what date it's going to be in place. As of right now, there's no COLAs budgeted to take place on July 1. So we wouldn't have to change to a new pay schedule.
So the schedule that's in existence for fiscal
Would hold until we get the new pay
Very
schedule,
cool.
yes.
How
Yes.
does the committee feel about that? I mean, that makes sense,
Well,
but
It makes sense, but we don't have the existing pay schedule. I mean.
That's the problem.
I think that's available online and would have been with last year's budget materials. We can resend it to you.
Okay, that would be great.
Good. Thank you.
but Fred, you were asking for something different. You were asking for person by person salaries, not the pay.
Well, yeah,
So I know that I did not provide that to the finance committee last year. If you got it in the past, I did not know that. I can provide you with this year's, what's anticipated for 21. You have to consider that, well, it's going to be difficult.
So,
I can have them create a schedule of what's everybody's being paid right now.
I think we have gotten it in the past, but I don't think we got it last year. And I do think there's some sensitivity. So I guess I would want to hear from the city manager and the city attorney. It's obtainable through an MPIA request.
Right, it's all public information.
Yeah,
It's public.
so it's all public information. I don't know. How do you want to handle this, David? We have seen it in the past. I don't know that there's any big surprise. I hope there's no big surprises,
No,
but
I don't think so. I think it's public information that we can provide.
one of the things that I didn't know about in the past, and you talked about it when you briefed the council, but also in the discussion this morning, is this 401A. I really don't know much about that. I assume every council member gets it.
No.
Well, there's some compensation things that I think are happening that we're not aware of. And again, I don't think they're secret, but I'll get to you in a second, Duan. I guess I just have a curiosity about it. I don't know it's critical for the budget, especially since you're saying you're going to defer making city contributions to it. But that was another thing that I thought was new. Sheila and then Duan.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I think we need to know how many people are being impacted by that.
Yeah, that would be a good
By
information.
which one?
The 401A.
Okay, I can do a count. It's department heads, office managers, I can't remember who all.
Is it
city
pretty much
attorneys.
exempt? Is it
Yeah.
all exempt employees?
Most of the exempt. It's not all exempt.
I think this leads to a larger discussion that the council needs to have on contracts that are negotiated independently of the finance committee and the city council. The mayor has the right to negotiate contracts, and it appears that we don't have a right to know what's in it.
Yeah.
So I think that's an issue that needs to be discussed at some point, but I don't think it's germane to the budget.
Yeah, I wish the city attorney was on, because we may want to have this discussion in closed session, because there's a lot of interesting parts and pieces to this.
Right. I think you're right, David. I'm getting a little uncomfortable just because I don't want to step on anything we shouldn't. I think the questions being asked are appropriate, but I think we might want to be careful what the setting is. Sheila, did that finish your thought? Because Duan had a question.
Yeah, I'm not asking for us to have this discussion now. I'm putting it off because I think we're getting off topic right now. We need to get to the work of the so that's what I'd like for us to go to the CIP and approve what we can approve today.
Let's pick up Duan's question. And then
I just have two very quick questions. Sorry. The first one is a 401A like a 401K?
In some respects, yes, but it's through a different section of the Internal Revenue Code.
Oh, okay.
The same type of thing where there are employer and employee contributions set aside.
401A. That's my first time hearing that.
What's the difference?
So we probably need to get HR on here and maybe the Office of Law, because I'm not going to be able to tell you all the legal differences between 401A and 401K.
Okay. So the second question, when you do the printout of the, I'll just say, we can't as a council change independent salaries. That has to be done by.
No.
It is the responsibility of the HR manager to establish the pay plan and the council passes the pay plan. Once we have the pay plan in place, we all adhere to the pay plan, including all upper level department heads are on the same pay plan as everybody else. They don't get arbitrary raises based on some number. They have to stay to the same pay schedules as everybody else. Same COLAs.
When do we get to vote on that?
When the new pay plan comes into effect, which right now is scheduled for January 1.
So that would be late this year. We would have an opportunity. Okay.
Duan, most of these we're talking about, I think, are negotiated agreements. We ratify those agreements, but there's been a discussion, a give and take, and they reach a decision about what the pay increases will be. That's not for the non-represented. It's for the 4 unions. Okay, that's police, fire, and their 2 ASME units. In most contracts, the exempts get the same thing. So, you know, it's not a matter of us making that decision in most cases. It's the negotiations between the city and the respective employee groups. So we get it when it's all said and done, but we do give direction, or we're supposed to give direction to the city manager or whomever is our chief negotiator as to what the parameters should be. So for example, we approved a 3-year agreement with all 4 of our unions just last year. And that's what's on the table right now. We have a binding agreement with all 4 unions. And that agreement says they get a COLA as of July 1.
And that's the one, the one that we're discussing about pushing back. Okay.
Yes.
Alderwoman Finlayson,
Yes,
I don't know if you said 3-year. We have 4-year. It was a 4-year agreement. Once the new administration took over, we had a 4-year agreement. 21 is the 3rd year of that agreement.
Okay. Yes. 4 years. I'm sorry.
And typically the non-covered and exempt employees follow along, other than they're not in the police and fire pension plan, they follow along in step with what is done in the union agreement. So it essentially covers all employees. In effect, not in law, but in effect.
They have what's called a Me Too agreement or statement that says if they get it, me too.
Okay, I have a proposal for how to proceed with this next bit of business, and it's a few-step proposal. One is I think we've received, and I would recommend that we have a vote recommending to the council the Davenport report that tells us about our debt level situation and room. The second would be a vote on the capital improvement program, which includes the capital budget. But also, I think we need to go to the ordinance, which in section 22 shows the particular dollar amounts for the capital improvement projects in 22. In 23, there's this notion to take out the $1.5 million that's currently earmarked for Hillman Garage until we know what's going on with the RFPs for the city dock. And then section 24 is again in the ordinance, the acceptance of the capital improvement program, the CIP. So I think if we do all of those things, we will have taken care of all of the capital part of the budget.
Mr. Chair, what is your intent with Davenport's report?
Just simply to recognize it and recommend it forward to the council from the Finance Committee.
Okay. So we don't need to approve Davenport's.
No, this is just, so in our report, I would say that I wanted to go down each one of our votes and say, we received and recommend to the council the Davenport report. Now, another thing we could do would be to offer changes, saying we don't think we should have our ceiling at 12%, it should be at 11%. I didn't hear any motion from the committee to do anything as a result of getting this report other than receive it as helpful information. So all I'm simply saying is just make a motion that we acknowledge it and recommend it forward to the city council.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Next is the CIP and capital budget, which is in my binder right after the Davenport report, and it includes some general description information in the front. It includes the capital budget tables, which start on page 10 and go through page 14. We have had some discussion on this. I did not sense that there was any pushback from the committee on it. One of the particulars was taking out what we had budgeted in the past for the Hillman Garage. Today at the FACT committee meeting, and we'll get their meeting again next Thursday, we'll get their recommendations, but there was some discussion about holding back some contingency monies. David, you talked about maybe we should look at some of the PAYGO projects. My problem with the PAYGO projects is they tend to be our warm weather street and sidewalk repair kinds of things that are very much appreciated by my voters, and I think all of our voters. So while I certainly welcome a notion that we should be talking about contingencies, I'm not sure if there's some notion on the part of the committee that we do anything other with the capital budget than accept it as presented. But I'm opening that up to the floor for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I am comfortable making a motion that we approve the CIP as it's written.
Nope, we're talking about the capital budget. Are you talking about then, so all of the CIP, including the capital budget?
The pages you just referenced, pages 10 through 14.
That's the capital budget.
And improvement plan project summary.
All right. Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All right. Is there discussion? And do I see any hands from colleagues? Fred, go ahead, start.
All right. Is there a list of the order that you expect to complete any of these projects, Mr. City Manager?
What's the CIP?
Yeah, in the CIP.
So most of these that are new projects take a little bit of time to get off the ground, as you probably very well know. Let me just go back to what Alderman Arnett said about the projects that are funded by PAYGO. So neither the sidewalk project, which we actually didn't ask for any additional funding for sidewalks because we have a backlog of funding for that. So there's no additional funding for sidewalks. Street repairs is bond funded. It's not capital reserve. I could get a list of the capital reserve projects pretty quickly for you to look at, or maybe Jody has those handy. That's what we're really talking about is maybe holding back that funding, but that funding won't move forward that quickly anyway because capital projects take a little bit of time to execute. Jody?
So if you're talking about PAYGO, we'll clarify that it's not your typical PAYGO. It's coming out of the Capital Reserve Fund.
Right.
We don't have any PAYGO monies, regular general fund PAYGO going over to capital this year. We have 1.7 million coming out of the Capital Reserve Fund and going into the projects. So I don't know if you want that list now. I'd have to flip the pages. I'm trying to think of where we might have that summarized.
Don't we have it, Jody, on pages 13 and 14?
13.
It's on page.
They break out.
So those are totals, but to get the project breakout, I have a list somewhere, but not at my fingertips of which projects make that up. So I'd have to look for it. And as opposed to that, I just have to flip through and tell you where all the pay-go is going this year.
Which would be on each of the pages of the
Right,
CIP.
flipping the pages, looking for FY21 pay-go, not pay-go, capital reserve fund. I know 350,000 is going to, no, never mind, sorry about that.
Yeah.
35,000 is going into City Harbor.
Fred, is this what you're looking for?
Well, I'm looking for an order of,
Yeah, I didn't think that. Yeah, you want to know when we're going to start and do all these.
yeah, I mean, in years past, not every year, but at least from time to time, we've gotten something that says, well, the Barbara Lane, we intend to make that the first project. You know, the committee has ranked these things, and, you know, Russell Street's number 2, you know, whatever. And I was just curious if that document existed, that's all. And so many of these depend on grants, and how do we know if and when we get these grants? You know, because obviously if we get a grant, the project can go forward. If we don't, it can't.
Yeah, so we have the ranking, the scoring for each project, and we can make that available because we had them all ranked and all graded and then ranked, so that's available. They'll get started at different times. Some of them are already midstream, so that those are going to move quickly. The ones that haven't started at all take a little bit of time because we usually have to hire a consultant to do the design work, and that takes a little bit of time.
Thank you.
And you do get a sense of it in the CIP because it shows the funding by year out to 2026. So if you don't see funding in out years, I'm just at random picking the City Harbor flood mitigation. Most of that money shows up in 2023. There's no money, well, there's already money allocated, but it looks like that's when that project will happen. But if you're looking for a synthesized sense of the order that things are going to go, that's one question. But there's another question that we've asked in the past, and I think is germane to your question, which is, are we going to be issuing bond money and then not spend it? And I think that has been a longstanding issue that I know the administration has attempted to address, and I think it's a good one to get on record.
The answer to that question is no. I will not. I will only issue the bonds that we intend to spend within the next 12 months.
Right.
But I think I did it in my presentation. I'm calling it. I've stolen somebody's term, just-in-time borrowing. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I thought we had that. The
quandary in the past was that we couldn't get started with anything without having some financing. And when they're bond financed, you have to have the bond financing to even get started. So I think we, over the last 5 years, have worked through that using bands and other tools to allow us to get started with projects without having the full amount sitting in a bank account somewhere.
I'll get you in a second, Juan, and then Ellie too. I am flipping through the CIP, and I do see notations on some of these projects. I'm looking at the Crab one, which is really in the hands of DNR, and that's open space money. I'm looking at this project, Eastport Satellite Police and Community Center. My notation is this is something that needs more discussion by the council writ large. I think there was some questions about the effectiveness of this. I believe the chief of police has said that he's agreeable to try this. Alderwoman Finlayson, you had mentioned that we used to have a lot of substations, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that they had not been particularly effective. So before we run away with the CIP, do we want to make any committee notes like the ones that I just referenced? Here's another one on Russell Street. Russell Street is being delayed because it's not clear who owns the property. So there are some notes that we could consider making in reference to the individual CIP projects. Another one is on page 37 of the CIP, which is this whole issue of modernizing and coordinating our stoplights with the county and the state, who, interestingly enough, are not coordinated with each other. There's this new project that David talked about again this morning that I'm very excited about, the gasification plant, if that's the right term, David, that I certainly would, when we have discussions with the council, want to tout that project. But if we're going to make any specific notes on the CIP to pass on to the council, this would be the time to make note of that in our vote.
What was that term you used? Something, vacation?
It's organics processing.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't actually result in gas. It results in soluble mulch.
Oh, gasification. Okay.
Gasification. Yes.
Hear the G. I'm wondering what that was.
Sheila, were you going to comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, could we make a notation of some of the projects that we would like the council to look a little more closely at, particularly the substation? And I did share that, several police chiefs back, we had substations in Bywater and Newtown and Harbor House, and they were removed for a reason. So we've gone around with this. I think this bears more discussion. The Russell Street project, I am concerned that that has been taken out. I mean, it's still in here, but it's no funding for any of the out years, which means that that's not going to be addressed. And I know, David, you said you trying to figure out whose property it is, but it looks like now it's stopped.
No. That one's fully funded. There's no additional funding that's required. So we're still investigating the ownership, but once that's established, then there's enough funding in there to do the work that's required, is what we believe. And if there's additional funding that's required, once that determination is made, then we would come back to the council. But no funding has been removed from that project at all.
And I'll add, Alderwoman Finlayson, if you look at the financial activity on that project page, you'll see that nothing's been expended or encumbered there. So that $781,000 is there and ready to be expended as necessary.
So okay. I suggest that we split this into two different things. One, this would be a vote on the CIP, and the other is that in my first draft of the report, I can go through and make note of all of these things that the committee talk about and put them in as forwarding to the council recommendation that these need further deliberation before the council as a whole. And you and Fred will both have a chance to see that report, hopefully before 7 o'clock Monday evening. Hopefully before the week is out, and you can embellish my initial draft. Does that seem like an acceptable way to go?
I'm good with that, and I'm good with us approving the CIP as written, with the notations that there are some things that may bear more discussion.
Yeah, that we do in our report.
Right.
Dewan, Fred, did you have your hand up?
No, it's fine with me, with Sheila.
Dewan, and then Ellie had comments, questions. Dewan?
Sorry. Yeah, I had a couple of quick questions, some of which you guys have already kind of touched on, but nevertheless, be persistent. The city playgrounds and parks at $350,000, is that including the Haka playgrounds.
Give us a page number, please.
Oh, I'm on page 10. I'm just going down the list.
Oh,
but I mean,
in there. All right.
yeah.
I can't answer that.
That was funding that the state provided this year. The legislature approved that. It was kind of a surprise to us that they did that, but that's intended to do the Pitt Moyer Rec Center playground. If there's additional money left over, it would be for other city parks, but it would not be for HACA under the current setup with the HACA parks.
So when do we plan to put in place that merger where where the city's Parks and Rec Department would take over maintenance and care for HACA's playgrounds and facilities? Because as I expressed previously, my concern is that these parks are very nice and all across the city, but none of them are near low-income communities or where children don't have to walk on Forest Drive or a highway or a street to get to it.
Yes, I would be reluctant to talk too much about that because of the lawsuit that we have right now, as far as taking over responsibilities from HACA. If that's resolved favorably and we want to have that discussion at some point in the future, the council would have to weigh in on that because that would be assuming a whole lot of additional financial responsibilities that we don't have today. But some things have to happen first for that discussion to happen.
And it would require some legislation, one would assume.
I'd be willing to sponsor it. I really would like, nice parks and playgrounds for kids to participate to play on without having to walk to Eastport Elementary School a mile and a half away or wherever they're going at to play nowadays. Next is the
hold that thought for 1 second though, because David, am I correct? There is no money here for the redo of the playground at Eastport Elementary, right? Because that's school
Correct.
property.
Correct.
Okay.
The next one was what you guys just discussed, the Eastport Satellite Police Community Center. I hope that when you guys bring it to the full council with the note that we, I don't know how this money can be moved, but I hope it can be moved in the direction of redoing the existing community center and giving, again, our children an opportunity instead of a police center, jailing them.
That's the note that I intend to put in our report to the council on this section.
And down a little bit more, 50025, the hiker/bike path, Route 450 to the Navy Memorial Stadium. It says we're contributing $63,000. Is that correct? Am I reading that correct, Jody?
Actually, I think Gavin is putting that money up personally.
That was for the route to the Navy Memorial Stadium.
Yeah, I don't remember what that includes.
It says we're partnering with the Academy. Oh, we can't hear you, Jody. It's on pause.
Sorry. I was asking for are you talking about the Trail Connections project?
No, this is the, I do have that one listed on as a note too, but this one is 50025 hiker/biker path, Route 450 to the Navy Memorial Stadium. It's page 29.
Yeah. Okay. So, and your question is?
So we're contributing 63,000 to that this year, or?
No, that's already been appropriated in previous years.
So over the course of the next three, we'll do 24, 105, 105?
Yes, that's what's planned out of capital reserve, but nothing for this year.
And it says in the notes that we're partnering with the state and the Naval Academy. Are they contributing equal or greater funds?
They own the property, so they would allow us to build it on their right of way.
So that's all they're doing for us, is just allowing us to build it on their property?
I think so, because I think if they were making financial contributions, they would be shown here as
if they were giving us money to contribute to the construction costs, we would have it in there as an other source down here.
Ooh, that's $300,000 for a bike path. I'm just putting that out there. The next one is the Trail Connections at 50010. That's page 38.
Mhm.
Fred, I don't want to mess with this one because this is in your ward. But again,
That was the last
The
one.
Poplar Trail.
Actually, this is also in Rhonda's ward.
yeah, again, I'm just pointing out that we're giving a lot of money to bike paths and walking paths, and I mean,
So Dewan, I take your point, but I'm wondering if this isn't more relevant when this gets to the council writ large.
well, you guys just passed it, right? I was just bringing up.
We haven't passed it yet, but we're about to.
To bring it to us, right?
Right, to send it to you with our recommendations and notes on it.
On the trail connections, please notice that that's a grant in which it looks like we have a quarter matching commitment there. So if we put up our own money, only have $111,000. The 331 is a grant.
Still, money. And then on the last one, the Weems Wayland Field. What's the plan? I see that they put 52,000 aside and then 105. What's the plan for that funding?
So that's, there's still a requirement to do a study of the material that's under the playing field. So that's
Okay.
what the first year is to do the testing. And then Maryland Department of the Environment would tell us what actions have to be taken to be able to use that as a playing field, whether it's adding additional soil layer, putting a gas processing system or whatever. That's the next year. That's a higher number. But for this next year, it's really just testing and analysis.
Thank you.
Ellie, did you have something you wanted to inject?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Two things. First, similar to what was discussed this morning, I think, all we have on this piece of paper is the numbers that say that Hillman has, is off. And I think it would be very helpful for the record if we had some sort of synopsis or one-page summary of what we anticipate the bids are going to give us. In other words, I cannot explain to my constituents how we anticipate Hillman to be rebuilt, how we anticipate the wayfinding to be installed. They're just deleted off of the capital budget. And I think that that's almost looks like, forgive me for saying, irresponsibility. So it's not known really what we anticipate that this successful bidder will provide us. And again, as I had said previously, I, for what it's worth, feel a little uncomfortable not having $0 in it all for Hillman, understanding the hopeful, and I'll emphasize hopeful, path forward. So that's my first concern. And then the second concern.
Can I address that first?
Sure.
I think the committee accepted as one of the ground rules that is not part of the capital budget and CIP discussion at this point. That will be taking place in July or whenever we're going to be getting the report on the bids from the bidders and then the negotiation with a successful bidder.
Right.
I share your lack of comfort. I am deathly afraid of getting all the way down to the end of the line and then the council saying, nah.
Well, I understand all that. I just didn't know. I'm just offering if we should have some kind of documentation on what the thought process is at this time in history approving it.
Why don't you send me some suggested language? I'll put it in the draft and the committee can review it.
Okay, I'll work with David on doing something. If David agrees, if I don't want to force the issue, but I just think for documentation, we all have selective amnesia and say, what did we do? The second thing.
I was trying to find the CIP sheet for the Hillman Garage because perhaps we just addressed that whatever the comments are there.
Put it in that paragraph.
Yeah.
Do you agree, David? I don't want to force the issue. I don't.
I think it's fine if we add additional me see how it reads right now. Yeah, we can add, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
I'll write up something sent to you.
Okay. The second thing is I'm not able to explain to my constituents the path forward on line item. Let me get my, I brought the wrong magnifiers. The city dock, City Harbor flood mitigation, the 13 million, is that tied up at all? I mean, we have the two parts. We have City Dock and then we have Compromise Street, correct? In that line item?
For the mitigation.
Yeah. That project is one line item. Does that include both aspects of the flood mitigation?
It includes the Compromise Street side project.
Okay, so
It doesn't include Dock Street at all.
okay, so where is Dock Street? Where is Dock Street addressed in the capital budget at all? Or is that part of the RFP?
But it is part of the RFP.
Okay. So, because at one time this line item I think addressed the whole thing, which was like phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1 now is I guess we could say the RFP, and now phase 2 is the Compromise Street, which we're putting, we're going, as past HPC approval and moving forward on. So, is that a correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Do you remember where we put that? Because we showed the Resilience Authority funding, I think in 23. So I think we have that in here.
Yeah, you have the 4 million of it. You do. You show 4 million for resiliency funding. So that's why I was confused. It seems like it's still all the same project because you put the resiliency money in that line item.
We talk which city?
50005.
What's the name of it?
It's called City Harbor Flood Mitigation, which is kind of a big deal.
So what was your question, David?
Yeah, you're right. It's all in there because that's shown in FY23, and so that would be the Dock Street side of the flood mitigation.
Okay, so that's the whole.
Yeah, if you look up in the description, it says the FY23 is for the Dock Street phase of the project.
That part of it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on that one, again, if you want to send me a note fairly quickly, I'm trying to scrabble together this draft so that Sheila can then put it into English. But so the sooner I get it, the better.
Yeah.
And we can put it in, the committee will be reviewing the draft and making their modifications. But I am trying to scramble to get that.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I'll get with city manager to just do a synopsis of the project as far as the funding.
So we have a motion before us to, Fred, yes.
What can be done about the flooding on City Dock prior to Hillman being built, if anything? I realize the project that Eileen and company have put together can't really move forward without Hillman being completed, but is there something we can do? I mean, don't we have pumps that are almost ready to go for Compromise Street now?
We've done a lot of that work already on the Dock Street side. We've, thanks to our work with Alderwoman Tierney, we have put backflow preventers in the storm drains, and we put pumps into I'm drawing a blank on the word for that, the inlets. We put small pumps into the inlets. So we pump the water into the stormwater with those pumps, and we stop the backflow of the high tides. That's a very temporary, as we've seen. Those have been in place for, I guess, over a year now. During extremely high tides or heavy rains, they don't hold up because they are temporary. But during most of the higher tide events, they keep the water off of Dock Street. Just recently, we finished putting a similar system, but a much different dimension over at the end of Newman Street, because that's about a 48-inch pipe instead of the roughly 4 to 6 inch pipes that we have over on Dock Street. But if you look at the end of Newman Street sometime when you're downtown, you'll see some large above ground pumps that are sitting there. That's part of that. We actually blocked off that large storm drain. Then we build a wall inside there to completely block off the tidal flow back up the pipe. And then we have those pumps to pump the stormwater as it comes down. Instead of having them run through the pipe, it gets pumped out. So again, a temporary measure. It doesn't hold for extra high tide events, but it helps for more of the normal high tides that we have that used to flood the street.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have a motion to recommend to the city council both the capital budget and the CIP. We've made some notes that we'll pass along in our report, some commentary to help the council look at particular things. Are we ready for a vote on that?
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Right.
The ayes have it. I would then direct us,
Notations, correct?
yes, yeah, yes, it's to come with our report.
I mean, Golden Garage is one of them from me.
Yes, yeah, no, and we're getting help from Ellie and David on that. So we voted. Duan, did you want to vote for reconsideration?
I would like to, yes.
I mean, my eye is with, with reservations, with, explanations. I mean, some of, like the one I think I question, but overall I don't. So,
So last I knew, you both are on the council. So this isn't a final vote. This is a committee report.
Okay, yeah.
And I think all of these things are perfectly germane. I've been thinking in the back of my mind how many days we're going to schedule this city council meeting to take place over. But I think right now we're just trying to clear up the finance committee votes so that we can complete our report.
I get it. I just wanted with reservations, that's all.
What's the typical success like in the past when you guys recommend it to the council? Does it normally just go? I mean,
It depends upon whether it's 10 o'clock at night or 3:30 in the morning.
okay.
It goes a lot faster in the morning.
Well, it also depends on the composition of the council. People like you have some things that you really think are important. I think certain things are important. If there's a huge difference between what everybody says, it's going to take longer, but that doesn't usually happen.
Especially CIP.
Yeah, not with the CIP. You're right.
Okay, I would suggest next that we go to the sections of the ordinance that are relevant to this, which I submit are sections 22, 23, and 24.
What are they, Mr. Chair? I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah.
So in the ordinance 01620, section 22 is approving the capital budget again with its
you're on the
dollar
ordinance.
amounts.
So you're on the ordinance.
I'm on the ordinance on page 5 of the ordinance.
Where is that? Is that on the agenda, or is it?
You'll have to get help from Takia on that. It would be back on the agenda.
It was on yesterday's agenda.
Yeah, it would be on yesterday's agenda.
All right, give me a minute, please.
It's 01620.
For a hard copy guy, Fred, you really do spend a lot of time looking at this stuff electronically.
Sorry. I didn't mute myself.
Ross, are you looking at a specific section?
Yes, sections 22, 23, and 24.
Okay, which is?
My notion is that we'll then go, after we finish this, we'll go back and start to pick off section by section the ordinance.
Now, by the motion we just took, didn't we give approval for these 3 sections?
We did, but I think we need to go through section by section and have a vote by the committee on each of these sections. You're absolutely right. It's a redundant vote, but these are pieces of the ordinance which eventually we'll have to vote to approve or not approve. Given the discussion yesterday, I think we might not be approving the whole thing, but we haven't gotten to that part yet.
Did you say page 23 or section?
Page 5, sections 22, 23, and 24.
My question is, did we just not approve those 3 sections with the vote we took? Nothing else, just 22, 23, and 24?
We did implicitly, but not explicitly.
Yeah.
I just want an explicit vote.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve sections 22, 23, and 24.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Yay! Now I suggest that the committee needs to return, stay in the ordinance, return back to section 1, which is where we were yesterday. And the discussion in section 1, which is also accompanied by Appendix A. By the way, Jody, I have to tell you, I'm finding these appendices to be extremely helpful. And I've been using them a lot when I'm trying to draft the report. So,
the only new appendix, we have the appendix A last year and the grant detail last year. We've added the revenue in the back, and the last one, so there was a D. Oh yeah, that's the capital project.
yeah.
Just to make sure that that's incorporated as a part of the ordinance.
That was intended as a compliment, and my comment would be, last year was such a blur because we were looking at so many things that I probably am admitting that I did not give these schedules the attention that they deserved last year, but this year I am giving them the attention they deserve. So section 1 includes the assumptions that are about the COLA and so forth. So we were not able to reach an agreement on section 1 yesterday, and I'm not sure we're ready to do it today either. So I would say let's leave that in abeyance and move on to the next sections, which is section 2, which is the amount of money for art in public places. We have had discussion on this. I think we understand what's in there. Is the committee ready to take a vote on section 2?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve section 2 that deals with art in public places, $68,000.
I'll second that.
And we do recognize that 40,000 of that is new money, and I guess the other 28 is carryover, or is that?
And we have a schedule from Jody that shows us that detail. All in favor of recommending approval of section 2 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Section 3 is the community block grants. I do not believe we got a recent schedule from you, Sheila. Wait a minute, this is different.
Yeah, this
community block grants. This is a different thing. So is there any discussion on the community block grant amount?
None from me.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, the next one is a biggie. This is our projections for the amount of grant monies we're receiving. We have a number of tables at the very beginning of the budget binder that get into a lot of detail about the grants. I personally have some worries that I've expressed that maybe the grant picture will change as a result of the pandemic and the federal government in particular shelving out huge amounts of money for other things. And I don't know whether it would affect burn grants or Pell grants, but I have no information that would argue that I know any better than this number. And we do have an Appendix B that gets into the detail there.
And those grants are from the departments and we've asked them to give us grant information for those that they believe they are going to receive next year. And if it turned out that they did not, we would somehow, and we've done this in the past, block out Munis so that things cannot be charged for those line items.
And in the past, as we know throughout the year on the Finance Committee, these numbers tend to come in higher, or there'll be some end of year money that someone will want to give us, and we're very good at scoffing that up. And also some new grants that we didn't want to budget come in. So that's why the adjusted fiscal 20 is higher than the budgeted fiscal 20. Unless there's further discussion, I think this is something we should be ready to make a recommendation to the council to approve.
Move approval of section 4 under grant funding.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. I'm the only one?
Aye.
No, I said aye.
Okay, sorry. All right, section 5. This is the Community Legacy Fund, $160,000. Is there discussion on this?
What is it? I don't remember.
Well, that's a good question. We have to go back and...
There was a community legacy program a few years ago that had some funding left over, and the grantor told us that the city can use it for its intended purposes, and we are now working to spend it. We're spending it down. There has been some communication that we might get more money in the future, but nothing's been awarded to date.
Well, what does it do? I mean, what's the purpose of the community legacy?
The Wellman's funds, so they're used to help homeowners do improvements and those types of things. It's a variety. This can be used for a wider variety than things like the block grants, but it's to help community housing improvements or purchasing your house and helping with settlement costs, that kind of thing. More detail would have to come from Teresa.
And I think part of it has to do with certain legacy communities like Clay Street community. I know there's been quite a few projects done over there over the years.
All right.
I would make a gratuitous sidebar comment here that we need to be doing some succession planning. Teresa Wellman does an incredible amount of things which are pretty complicated and often very esoteric, and she does it by herself. And I don't know what we're going to do when she decides to retire.
Yeah, we had a conversation. I'm going back to school actually to get my degree in housing development, so I can get that job up off of her.
Okay. Remember, you have to wait a year after you're an alderman before you can apply for the job.
That's no problem at all. That's no problem at all.
We're glad to hear that you're continuing your education and finishing up. So is there a motion on this section?
I'll move approval of section 5 under community legacy funds.
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. All right. Section 6, moving right along here. This is the estimate for fiscal 21 for forfeiture and assets and capital outlays. Jody, is there any more detail that we need on that? We have discussed it.
No, I'm sure you know this money comes from our share of seizure, comes from the federal group, and they split it among the participants in the area. What they're planning to use it for, we would have to have the police come in and talk to that.
Right.
You can buy it, use it for capital outlay, different things for police equipment, cars, that kind of thing.
Is there any suspicion that this could have a pandemic impact? And if there is, would we know what that would be?
Nothing was, do you mean getting additional funds or causing?
Or less, I mean, who knows? I mean, to me, this seems like we should approve it. I don't have any better guess. Fred?
I thought this money came from the state's attorney's office from seizures they do, usually in drug cases.
It's local and federal in nature, and depending on where the seizure was done. And like I said, you'd have to talk to the police to get the details on where all the funds come from. We have different pots of money in there from different sources of seizures. So I'm sure some comes from state's attorney.
All right. Well, I'll move approval or second if it's already been moved.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Section 7. Now, Ellie, I'm glad you're here. This is a revolving fund, so the money can be there, and I certainly am inclined to approve it, but it wasn't, is this affected at all by your withdrawing your legislation?
What happened to section 6?
That was the one we just voted on, right? Forfeiture and asset.
Forfeiture and asset seizure.
Yeah, we just did that.
Okay, I've got funds. All right, got it.
Yep. So now section 7 is the sprinkler revolving fund. Is that only available to the people on either side of Main Street, or does this have a broader, your legislation was only about buildings along Main Street, but the sprinkler fund is available to a broader segment?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. The postponement, I call it a postponement of the legislation, was really due to the start of the time that we've asked them to install the sprinkler system, the 5-year window of time. We didn't think it was a good time to start that stopwatch during a pandemic. So
is there?
But if the sprinkler fund is still applicable.
Right. Thank you. Is there a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of section 7, sprinkler system revolving fund.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Moving on to section 8, contractual services for the reforestation fund, $70,700.
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Section 9, the PEG fund, $442,400.
Move approval.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Section 10, this is a big number, homeowner assistance trust fund, $794,000.
What is that? Homeowners Trust Fund.
That also is managed by Teresa Willman, and that primarily is used to help homeowners purchase their home and help with settlement costs, those kind of things.
Is that what the owner-occupied houses along Clay Street use?
That I don't know.
There are 10 or 11 on Clay Street that are Habitat homes.
Right.
That could have used parts of these funds. And the rest of that is part of Penrose, I guess.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask you to join, Dewan.
Yeah.
Dewan, please.
Yeah. So I do have a quick question, because before this is approved, I I know that we did have discussions about opening this up and looking at some of the criteria so that it does expand to people in Haka looking to take the bridge or take the next step to purchase housing within the city of Annapolis. Right now, the criteria would not allow for them to meet that process. And I understand now it's simply for housing. But I'd like to also open it up to like duplexes, rent assistance, security deposits, so that people can move into additional housing. So does that have to be done? How would that work, Joey?
Well, I was just going to suggest that with the committee's permission, I would love it if you would write up something and send it to me. We can put it into our report. I would suggest we approve this amount, but I think that's the kind of thing that needs to go into a note for the council. May not be dealt with in the budget, but it could be a parking lot issue for deliberations. As we tell ourselves, right after passing the budget, we're going to spend July and August discussing all these things that came up. Every year we tell ourselves, but I know with your youth and energy, you will really compel us to do it.
I'm not again, especially if it has to do with housing.
Mr. Chair. Oh, Duan, be careful. This is the time whenever you open your mouth, you're going to be given an assignment. But anyways, I'm a little confused. We had in the moderately priced dwelling units, we deleted the fee in lieu of. Was that fee going to this bucket of money? I should know the answer to that. Duan, can you help? I mean, my concern is if we deleted the fee in lieu of, are we going to get, where is this funding coming from?
So these are getting into programmatic questions, and I'm thinking that maybe we'd want Teresa to come on to the meeting and explain.
Oh, I thought you was already saying that.
Money and what's going in, what can come out, and whether or not we can use it for HACA ownership.
Well, it's not for HACA ownership. It's not even look at it as it's a city resident who lives in HACA who would like to get out of HACA.
Oh, so to buy a unit somewhere else.
Yeah. Not at all for.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I like for them to be able to get into subsidized or market rent housing or apartment complexes.
But am I correct on where the source of the funding comes from? Does it come from that fee in lieu of? Because we won't have it.
Yeah, we have had that discussion, and so in October, actually, when I was in Detroit, we voted on that legislation to remove that fee.
Correct.
And so, so
that I believe you're correct, and because it's coming back to me now, but we still have a substantial balance in that fund that has not been used.
So
Sheila, go ahead.
So may I ask Alderman Gay to talk to Teresa Wellman? Because for some reason, I think part of the inception of this fund had to do with outside funds, which may have had restrictions. But Teresa Wellman, Ms. Wellman would know about that.
So what I was going to ask the committee is, do we want to defer action on this and invite Teresa to come in and talk to us just to make sure? I mean, this is a large amount of money. I do remember her explaining it to us in the past very patiently, but it went in one ear and out the other. So we can move forward with action on this and pick it up, or we can defer action on this and hear from Teresa.
Mr. Chair, I am comfortable approving this amount for this purpose. What I think we're talking about is how it's to be used, which isn't addressed in
it's not here.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so
Jody was saying something. Were you correcting?
No, I was just confirming that all you're doing here is approving the spending of this amount. It has nothing to do with the criteria by which you spend it.
Yeah.
If you are interested in changing that, that's a different issue.
Okay, so we can take that vote. We can either get a note from Duan or Teresa that could be a supplement to pass on to the council, or Duan can put that on his list of things to bring up at the city council budget meeting, or both. But at this point, it sounds like we're ready for a vote.
So I'll make a motion that we approve Section 10 Homeownership Assistance Trust Fund.
Second.
All right. Is there further discussion? Duan, did you want to make one more comment?
Yeah, Jody, I do have a quick question. In regards, since Ellie, mentioned that. So if we were to, and I'm speaking in ahead, if we were to open it up, obviously the funds would, run up a lot quicker. So at some point, how do we continue to add outside of grant money funding to that homeownership account?
That's not I don't think that's a budget question. That's a policy question.
I couldn't tell you. If it's connected to the same program, you'd have to connect it to that funding source. And as you say, you've stopped the funding source. So either you'd have to start that back up again or figure out another funding source you want to add to the pool. Now, what's out there available for this type of thing, that I don't know.
And when we bring it back, like when we so if it was originally used, I think if you wanted to put skip out on a moderately priced dwelling unit. So if we bring that back, is $25,000 per moderately priced dwelling unit too much to ask?
I don't think it's enough. I think it's way low. Look at Leo Wilson for the sale loft paid $85,000 in lieu of a $1.5 to $2 million unit. So I think that it's a program that we've set up for abuse. I'm not saying that Leo did anything wrong. He followed the rules exactly, but it's ridiculous the meager amount that we're allowing to be paid in lieu relative to what is being made. And so but I would argue, unless you want to pass me a note that we could put in our report, I think one of the things that I've noticed is it's at budget time when the city council really does pay attention to all the things the city's doing that sort of fly by us the rest of the year. And that's why I think the budget is a good process. And I just wish we'd do a better job of holding the thought and carrying through during the rest of the year. But this is the value of us being involved in the budget process.
Duan, let's talk about at the next housing committee meeting, because it's a fair point. I mean, the reason is that we introduced this legislation very late. The fees were just, they didn't help. And now we have limited opportunity for MPDU. So maybe that bucket of money is best used in affordable housing. So there's lots to discuss there in reintroducing something.
So we have a motion with second for recommending approval to the council of section 10. Are we ready for a vote?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Section 11, which we're now getting into the enterprise funds, and this is approving the sewer fund. I see we've got a number that is swirled over to the left that needs to be under that column there. Is there discussion on this? Failing that, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of Section 11, which is the sewer fund.
I'll second.
This had a nuance to it that I would just ask David to remind us of, that we got some monies for the sewer fund, which means we didn't have to raise fees like we are for water. Could you just remind us what that money came from?
Sure, it's for nutrient removal from the wastewater flow, and we got it from the state, from MDE. We shared that with the county, so that's a co-owned plant with the county, and we both got a portion of that, but by the amount that we think that's a one-time revenue, so it's not going to last forever, but because it was one time and helped our fund balance, and we don't need a sewer rate increase because of that.
Right. And I would again thank you and DPW, Marcia. Those presentations we got from the rate setting group for this and a couple of following ones were just excellent and very helpful. So we appreciate that information. Committee, are we ready for a vote on this? Motion and a vote?
Yes.
All right. Did we have a motion?
Yes.
Yes, all right. And it was seconded. All in favor of recommending approval of section 11 to the council, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Section 12, same stories, different pew. This is the water fund.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of section 12 on the water fund.
I'll second it.
Okay, I sense reservation. We are raising the fee here. It's just below the amount that would require it come to the council for legislation. Were you convinced by the study, Fred?
Well, I'm just hesitant with the, raising the fee. That's all. I don't care what the study says. I'll be a very small raise, but it makes me hesitant.
So the rule on fees is that we, by and large, particularly for the enterprise funds, can only charge fees that cover the cost plus a 5% margin, buffer, reserve fund, whatever. And we have gone into a very elaborate process of having really an annual analysis of this. I think the city has gone far beyond what other municipalities do, or even the county, unless I'm wrong, David. And I think that we have a very robust and, from my perspective, fair. I feel like I can have a conversation with John Hammond and not really hear complaints about his water bill, or at least not ones that are overly justified. And that's a relief. It's a relief to have that. So I certainly think this is something we could recommend approval to the council. Is there, are we ready to vote on this? Mm-hmm. All those in favor to recommend section 12 to the city council signify by saying aye.
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 Let's have it. Off-street parking, section 13. We did have elaborate information from SB Plus at our Finance Committee presentation. I think this is something that the future of it is a little uncertain depending upon what happens with visitors to Annapolis, but I'm not sure there's anything that we could do about it in these deliberations, just other than worry. Is there a motion on this section?
I'll move approval of section 13, off-street parking fund.
I'll second it reluctantly.
Would you like to have further discussion?
Nah, not really.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of recommending to the council's approval of section 13 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Section 14, Transportation Fund. This is another one where I worry what the pandemic will do to us. But again, if we have a double dip and it's worse than the first round, I think there's going to be big problems for transportation and parking. If we don't, and who knows, then I think these numbers, they're conservative. They're lower than what we experienced in 19 and 20. And I don't feel comfortable I have any additional wisdom to add to this.
Mr. Chair, I'll move approval of section 14, the transportation fund.
I'm not going to second this one.
I cannot see a reason not to second it. I have grave concerns about this, but I think I'm willing to put my faith in the city manager and the finance director when we get our monthly or bi-monthly alerts about things that we need to pay attention to on the budget will be potentially on the crest of wave 2 when this budget starts, and we may be having a lot more action, but I couldn't offer something in lieu of this. So I will accept a vote on this. All in favor of recommending, I will give a second and ask for a vote. All those in favor of recommending section 14 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. All right. Your opposition is noted, and I have to say, Fred, I understand. I just think we need to move this on to the council writ large for.
Well, you're right, and I could have seconded it for the purpose of moving it on, but
No, look, you have strong views, and we recognize those and honor them.
well,
And we look forward to your discussion at the council meeting.
comes a point when I think we throw good money after bad, and it's got nothing to do with the director or even, the way the department's being run. I just think at some point we've got to make some major changes. That's all.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I've been reading a lot about on-demand transit with vouchers and those sorts of things. I would like to have those discussions. Ellie, you chair the Transportation Committee. I'd love to be invited for a discussion on that, but I don't think it's timely for the budget deliberations.
Yeah, and it's very convoluted because there is a debt service involved. So it's not strictly saying no. We still have a substantial debt service. And the relationship between parking and transportation is vital in that.
So given my inclination towards on-demand transit, which I think is much fairer and a really improved system, I did ask Director Gordon yesterday questions about whether we should be buying new buses. My sense is that what we really need to do, and should have done long ago, is go to a true regional transportation system. We have the drivers and the buses that could really make a big difference there. I sat next to Pam Beidel at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, talked with her about this. I talked with Andrew Prusky about it. I think there's a lot of willingness to look at this. The city, I think, bears a disproportionate burden for the transit, and I'm not convinced that we really provide the transit that we need, but that's not for this budget, although budget is the time when we can hold people's feet to the fire. I think that I would certainly love to join colleagues in having a more robust discussion of this.
Has any ever talked to our representative on the county council about this? District 6?
I have not had a chance to talk to Lisa. In fact, I haven't had a chance to talk to Lisa about much, and I think I feel remiss in that regard. I would really like to propose that we have some joint meetings, our council and their council, during the year, at least a couple. And I think that would be the appropriate time and we should, before we set up those meetings, we set up a laundry list of agenda items, and this would be way towards the top of the list for me, that we have those deliberations. It's like we're ships passing in the dark. We really don't have ever much to do with each other. Even when Chris Combar was on, and I knew Chris very well, and I did help Lisa campaign. It's just like we don't have much to do with each other. The departments and our staff do a much better job coordinating with each other, city to county, than we do as elected officials. But again, I can't figure out what line item Jody would put that under for the budget, so I would accept a vote on this recommendation on this section. Oh, we did vote. All right, we're ready to move on to the watershed restoration.
But I will make a motion to approve section 15 watershed Reconfiguration Fund.
I'll second that.
And again, I thought we had very thoughtful, Sheila, I assume you want a note in the Finance Committee report that we go back and look at how this affects individual cohorts. You were raising questions about impact on churches. Dewan was raising issues about maybe we should have more categories at the high end for, and you're on mute, Dewan, if you're talking to us. I guess he's not talking to us.
You
Sorry,
sound better that way, Dewan.
Teresa on the line.
No. Oh, okay. Well, I think there's more to be discussed here, but I thought that the report we got was very thorough, very fair, and I feel comfortable with a vote to recommend this section to the council. But I'm more than happy in the report, particularly if somebody will volunteer courage to me, that we raised for the council that there are deeper issues here.
Mr. Chair, when I get your draft, I will make sure there's a notation that says we should pay particular attention to the fees that are being charged.
I thought you might. All right, Dewan, did you have a comment to make? Ellie? No.
Well, are you going to make any comment on transportation in your report? Just to.
I will accept.
Oh no!
Any written donations and cram them in for the.
Well, otherwise I'm resuscitating Rick Gordon right now. So, let me think of something.
All right. So we're on now to section 15. We have a motion that has been seconded for the watershed restoration fund amounts. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we will recommend that favorably to the council. Section 16, which is the refuse fund. And we heard City Manager Daryl remind the fact this morning that we have a new contract. The costs have gone up in that 7-year contract, but these are pretty straightforward costs. Is there any discussion on the part of the committee about this section?
No.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of recommending favorably to the City Council section 16 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Section 18, which is the health insurance fund. I'm sorry, section 17, the self-insurance fund. As you know, we're self-insured.
Mr. Chair, I don't recall the numbers on the self-insurance fund. Where can we find what was passed and what was expended currently?
Jody gave us line item detail on that in one of the 4 packets of materials we received last.
Alderwoman Finlayson, the self-insurance and health insurance fund tables are in the finance department section in the back.
Okay.
Along with the sprinkler fund, those are the separate funds that the finance department manages.
Now, is this money that we, go ahead.
What page? I'm in your section.
I'm finding it.
Is it 80 something? 89?
89, 88 and 89.
Okay.
We are the general fund makes a contribution over there annually in accordance with the actuarial recommendation. But out of that fund is where we pay full claims. So what you're approving in this section is the payment for claims, the amount of payment for claims.
So is that the 1.7 is the amount paid to date for 20?
Well, that's what we're projecting for 20, and that was made a couple months ago. So I'd have to, if you want any kind of update, I'd have to go and see how we're doing now. But those are the cost of the claims incurred that we project for 20 for workers' comp, general liability, and property.
Do we have a carryover balance in that account?
Yeah, there's a substantial, I won't say substantial, there's a balance in there. we're keeping enough over there to cover what the actuary says we need to have set aside in a reserve. And what we send over there is any delta that we feel that needs to make up the amount to get that reserve to where it needs to be.
So therefore, the 2.3 for 21 as opposed to the 4 for 20?
Correct. Correct.
So $2 million, almost $2 million.
Yeah, we've, there's more, we had anticipated more in 20. And so there is some left over there, which is one of the reasons why we reduced the amount we're going to send over, because we had more than we anticipated we would have from last year, from this year.
Okay.
Okay, is there further discussion or a motion?
Yes.
Yes, Fred.
Now, is that money simply contributed to the fund, or does that include paying, an investigator? We have a company like, Chubb does a lot of that stuff for groups like ours.
Any costs related to workers' comp claims, including the cost of the research involved, is paid through that fund, through the contractual services there. So it's both components, and we have an attorney that helps us occasionally with these workers' comp claims, and the payments for that is there too.
Well, it's not just workers' comp, though.
No, I'm just using that as an example. General liability claims or property claims as well, property damage. Any work we do in settling up those claims is charged to that fund.
So we pay a company to investigate, basically, claims. Is that correct?
It depends on what it is, and that would be a question for the Office of Law. Depending on what the claim is asserting, that we may have somebody do investigations.
Like a bus accident, one of our lights falls on somebody's head or something like that.
I think it would depend on if there's any questionable facts that you would need to investigate. Some of those property damage things are pretty clear cut, and I see the city attorney has joined us, so he can give you a better idea of what kind of costs we incur for the claims.
Boy, that's like magic.
Yeah.
They're paying attention.
Mr. Lyles, please.
If you could ask the question again, Councilmember Payon, I just got in, heard the end of it. You had a specific question, sir?
Question was, do we pay somebody, an investigator, do we pay somebody like Chubb, for example, to look at our claims, make recommendations to us? I know they do that from time to time. Actually, they do that for insurance companies.
Yes, yes, sir. We have a third-party risk management firm that does the initial assessment of the case along with myself and does investigations, and their fee and any additional monies for extra services are taken out of the self-insurance fund. Yes.
Okay.
How
is RCMD.
Okay. Riggs, Councilman, Michaels, and Downs, right? From Towson.
How does Legit fit into this? Are they related to this at all?
Who's that?
We don't use Legit, sir.
Oh, okay. That means they won't take us to dinner annually.
Well, I think do we have them for excess?
Excess. We have excess coverage through Legit.
Oh, okay.
So we still do use them, but just for excess claims.
Okay. All right.
Legit. They're too legit to quit. So.
Right.
Yes.
And as was pointed out, we have detail for both this and the health insurance fund on pages 88 and 89.
Right.
And last week we got even more line item detail on that. So like, Fred, if you wanted to look at some subsets of information under the self-insured fund, it's broken out into contract salaries, workers' comp claims expense, other expenditures, unemployment. There's a whole list of items that get into an explanation of
Okay.
that. Same thing on health insurance is broken down into medical, disability, and contract services. So
Great.
we're on section 17. Good questions. Is there a motion?
I move approval.
Sheila is muted, but I saw her second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Same drill for section 18, which is on our health insurance fund, which is considerably larger, $12 million. But, and we do have detail back on page 89 and even more detail with some light item information we got last week.
I do have some questions, but I'll wait until there's a motion.
All right, I'll move approval so we can move on with it.
All right.
I'll second it for the sake of discussion at this point.
All right.
I am cautious, and I'm looking at the amount. We're talking same amount over 2020. But somewhere along the line, in 19 we were 6.9 million, in 20 we were 11.9 million, $5 million increase. When did we discover that we were overcharging employees?
So first of all, the FY19 amounts that come out of the CAFR do not include any healthcare costs related to retirees. Those expenses are moved over to the OPEB fund at the end of the year for financial reporting purposes. So although during the year, our spending authority has to be in the $10 to $11 million range, those actual costs at the end of the year get split between two funds, and we move it to OPEB to track the retiree portion separately. So that number is inordinately low, and I would use it for comparison purposes. If you wanted to know the total claims for that year in both funds, I'd have to break that out for you separately. But as to your question, we analyze the health insurance fund balance at the end of each audited year, and we determine if it exceeds the pre-required 2 months. I have to get the calculation. There's an amount that we cannot exceed. We make sure we have that there in accordance with our fund balance policy. And this last year, when we were finished with the 19 statements, as you know, that usually happens around December, January, unfortunately, we had discovered we were in excess of that amount. And that's mostly the last 2 years. FY18 and FY19 were very good medical claims years for the city. So once we got to that point where we had an amount in fund balance that was more than our fund balance policy, we gave everyone a health insurance premium, which for this year was 7 pay periods. And so we'll see at the end of 20, once the numbers are audited, if there's any more to get back. But it also means that the city has contributed too much as well as the employee premiums.
I predicted some years past that we were overcharging our employees, and it fell on deaf ears in the finance department. And you were not here, so this has nothing. This is pre-Jody. Mm-hmm. Are we sure that we are charging them the correct amount now? They got 7 weeks of a holiday this year.
So as we go into next year, there are several factors that are affecting the premiums, and in actuality, going into this next year, premiums are going down slightly. But the split between how much we pay and how much the employee pays is changing in accordance with the contract. We're going from an 80-20 split to a 75-25 split. And so, but that would normally increase the employee's cost, but that's been offset somewhat because we're lowering the premiums. As we mentioned before, we're hiring a new pharmacy benefit manager firm next year. That's going to save us some costs. Plus, we're going to have some savings with the over 65 employees and retirees. So we're hoping to have a good year. We monitor it every year and we set the premiums accordingly. And as far as what happened a couple years ago, I can't say what that was determined. I do know that the last couple of years of claims have been far better as far as actual claims is concerned than the years before that. We had some very high claims years.
So, two questions, I think, if not more. It sounds as if we're dividing this amount, this 11 million, into two different pots, current employees and retirees. Are you saying that we have equal number of retirees as we do active participants?
I don't know why are you making that comparison? Remember, if you're looking at equal amounts, you're actually, go ahead.
I thought that's what I heard you say. I thought you said you were dividing that amount, the 11 million, into two different areas. That's why it's such.
So the 11 million spending authority relates to healthcare claims for both employees and retirees.
So my question is, do we have equal number? Or maybe you were just saying you split it, but it doesn't mean that it's...
No. That doesn't mean I split it evenly.
Yeah.
I would say if you look at FY19 as an example, 7 million would have been related, that 6.9 million would have been employees. The difference would have been retirees.
Okay.
That I'm not sure how that compares number-wise, and I'd have to look at our health insurance data to see how many retirees we have versus employees. But retirees are more expensive because they have more health issues, so their costs are generally higher, especially in the pharmacy costs.
My other question has to do with bargaining, and Mr. Lyles will probably kill me, but I'm going to ask. Is it on the table? And maybe City Manager Gerald, we're talking about deferring salary increases. Are we talking about doing anything with healthcare for employees? If we're going to defer salary increases, are we postponing any increases in their costs to healthcare? And particularly since we had to just give them a 7-paycheck vacation. I'm sorry.
Trisha's online. Trisha's here as well, and I see that Mike is muted.
Well, honestly, we'd rather not talk about what the negotiations are going to be with the labor unions. Right now, everything is on the table.
Okay. Thank you.
Great answer.
Yeah. But I mean, one thing we can say is that we negotiated to make sure that if our experience was such that we could provide a holiday, because our need for the premium cost coverage to get there, we are allowed to do it. We can't ever really predict what our experience is going to be. So good practice is to say, look, if our savings exceed, as they are in the contract, 10%, that we will go back and look at the ability to give a premium holiday, which we have done. And so a lot of what is the reaction here to giving the 7-paycheck holiday is really because our experience was such, even taking our 3 to 5 year post experiences and loading it in for what we use to determine what our cost share should be, we found that our experience was lower, and therefore we pass that savings back to the employee. It's a healthy way to provide the benefit to employees without getting ourselves into trouble where we are not, we are under predicting our experience costs.
Well, I recall vividly, maybe not so vividly, but I have been reminded by others that we were charging a higher predicted increase than we needed to be.
Right. And what resulted from that, Sheila, was that we also negotiated that we created a health fund and a health accounting. And so that's what Jody is working with. She is working with expenses and income, so to speak, revenues, whatever you want to call it, from the premium contributions, both the cities and the employees. And so with that good accounting, that's a much better way for us to see what our real and substantiated costs are going to be in the health insurance realm. And we're in a much better place to do that and to do that and with some transparency, which is what the unions asked for and respectfully received.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're on it so that we don't have to go this route again.
Yeah, and we meet quarterly with our insurance broker to really comb through those costs and expenses and work with our vendors and try to save money and try to find ways, which we're doing in a really proactive way. And we're trying our best to balance the increased costs that may come to the employee as a result of the cost share change. And some of that was, clearly intended to give the best benefit to our employees that we could get through collective bargaining.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There is another question about this, which again, I'm not sure we can answer, but I don't know how much we've been affected by the virus and what we think that might have as far as an impact on our health insurance costs. I know several years ago, we had 5 very sick employees that pushed our costs through the roof for that particular time period.
Yeah.
And then things fell back.
You always have high claims related to a few. That's always going to be true. So we are, Ross, we are having those conversations and looking at our data with our insurance broker right now, because I can say that, thankfully, we do not have city employees that are being largely affected by COVID related illnesses. And we're very thankful for that. So it looks like our claims are mostly being affected by the stress of this experience. And so we don't know, but we're trying to be reasonable and aware of the potential impact of delaying elective surgeries, elective medical treatments. And so all of that is part of our review, and it's part of what we're putting our attention on. So I just want to assure you that we are not asking those questions and not looking at our data with that in mind.
Well, I appreciate that, and I would have suspected nothing less, but I thought I'd bring it up.
May I make a positive comment that just an announcement, really? While most fire departments around the country are experiencing cases of the virus, our city fire department has not had a single case. And I think that speaks volumes to their professionalism, their skill set, and our ability to provide them with the materials and supplies they need to keep themselves safe during a very difficult time.
Yeah, we've got a good village here trying to make that work. And, we have a good communication system too amongst ourselves. So we make sure employees are getting the resources they should be getting to the best of our ability. And as far as cases are concerned, we've got a really nice interaction between OEM and HR and the departmental folks. So there's good attention on it.
Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Chair, would you like a motion to approve Section 18 Health Insurance Fund?
Please.
You had the motion already, and
okay.
you seconded it. You just
I
had-
didn't already.
No,
All right.
Alderman Pound, you made the motion.
I
Sheila
appreciate the level of discussion here. I think it's an important area to take very seriously, but at this point, are we ready for a vote? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And that's a vote to recommend favorably to the city council. We're almost through this ordinance. We have some biggies to come back to, but some of us have been meeting since 8 o'clock without lunch or anything else. And I did want to remind the committee that we have a whole schedule of things to return to 1 through 8. A lot of them we've ticked off today. Some biggies are left to be discussed. Do we want to continue to try to get through this ordinance and then pick up again tomorrow? Or what is your druthers committee?
Mr. Chair, could we do 19 and 20? 24 on seems to deal with, or 25 on.
26?
26
25 on.
tax
Yeah.
rate.
25 on are issues for the city attorney. We will
Right.
need to have him speak to us about that, but you're right. All right, let's do 19 and 20 and then do a little wrap up and meet again tomorrow.
Okay, I'll make a recommendation that we give a favorable recommendation to section 19, the Fleet Replacement Fund.
And Director Gerald, this is an area where we had a little bit of a cutback this in operations in your proposals for reductions in spending for fiscal 21. I had raised a question, at least in principle, are those reductions included in these numbers, first of all? And secondly, are we being short-sighted, particularly on cutting back on operation costs?
The number should include the reduction. I'm sorry.
I said, obviously, you wouldn't have recommended it if you thought you were being short-sighted, so that's somewhat of an insulting question, but.
Right, you would never, you never want to have to cut back, but we think that it's prudent to do that because we need reductions, and we think that that's the right amount to reduce those. And the numbers that you should see there should reflect the reductions, so it wouldn't be an additional reduction beyond those numbers. Jody can validate that.
Yes, we felt, I think the past year that the costs that were estimated there were a little overstated. And we ended up with a balance there that we should be returning to the participants. So in that manner, we gave back some to the general fund this year. We'll have to see how that goes forward into the following year. I don't know how all these salary changes are going to impact that fund, because as you know, when we delay the COLAs, that's going to lower the cost of this fund too, because we would delay that COLA for everybody, not just the general fund employees. So we're going to have some cost savings here too. So we'll see how it rolls forward into 22, but I don't foresee any issue with continuing the fund.
If we get to
ladies first. Sheila, please.
I was just asking if Jody was referring to 20 or section 19.
20, they were talking about fleet operations, and that's 20. Yeah, that's right. 19 is the one that we're talking about. This is 19 is the fleet replacement, and that's simply some funding to buy any vehicles that we don't anticipate having to replace, and then the debt service on the equipment loan that we have to make.
Fred, go ahead, please.
No, I just had a comment. That is, if we get the delay and.
I was going to let that note of optimism / assertion go by.
There's nothing wrong with optimism, but the fact of the matter is, at this point, it's not a go. And everybody keeps talking like they assume that the unions are going to accept this. They may very well. I understand negotiations are not closed or anything like that, but I don't think we can assume that at this point.
Right, and this will be taken up again tomorrow when we go back to the ordinance and take up section 1. But for the purposes of closing this out, is there a motion to recommend approval of section 19 to the city council?
I already made the motion, but I'll make it again.
All right. Do we have a second?
Not from me.
I'll second it for the purposes of discussion. Fred, did you want to have any more discussion on section 19?
No.
All right. Are we ready for a vote then? All in favor of recommending approval of section 19 to the city council signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right. And Fred, if you want to give me a note to include in the report, I'd be happy to include that for the benefit of the city council members. Moving on to section 20. This is the fleet operations. We've already discussed the fact that there's some reductions in there, and the city manager and finance director have explained why they think they can do that. Is there other questions or a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve section 20, Fleet Operations Fund.
All right. Is there discussion?
Is there a second?
Fred, are you not seconding? All right, I will second again for the sake of discussion. If we're ready for a vote, all those who want to vote in favor of recommending section 20 to the city council signify by saying aye. 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 Those opposed?
No.
No. And again, I'd be delighted to have a note, Fred, to discuss, to pass on to the council. Section 21 is the estimate of anticipated revenues. Are you ready to discuss this, or shall we postpone this till tomorrow when we might have more time and not be as hungry?
I would move that we postpone it till tomorrow. I mean, it's an important section.
Okay. All right, I appreciate that. I'm starving. I want to return the committee's attention to our discussion item list, the 1 through 8, which has on mine, Sheila, in 8, item F added to it, OEM conversions. There are some things way back in number 2. We've really not gotten a chance to talk about the unduplicated appropriation tables on pages 37 through 39. I really do want to have that discussion with Jody, and we have not had a discussion on the staffing table on page 41, and we got a supplement to that from Katie that I find most interesting. So we need to do that. I think we have gotten through a lot of the rest of this. We have to do the vote on the revenue projections number 4. But these are things, I think 6 is done. I think 7 is almost done. So I think we're well through this list, and we can pick it up tomorrow when we commence our deliberations. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
I think a motion to sorry, I'm trying to do 3 things at once. I move that we adjourn.
Before you adjourn.
We have a motion. Takia has some information, and I did want to thank people. Takia?
Before you adjourn, I just wanted to remind you that tomorrow you actually have the hiring freeze, the COLA's discussion, and additional cuts discussion on your agenda.
Okay, good. And we have other things as well. I know Jody and David, you have had very, very long days, even aside from the virus, the pandemic, and we appreciate your work and your help and all the materials we've gotten from you. I think the Financial Advisory Commission got a lot of very good information this morning, and I'm hoping they will digest it and come back. I heard some things from Bob Burden and Jim Cardillo that I think will be fascinating, but thank you for your long days. I believe we're ready for a vote for adjournment.
Wait, before we do, Jody, do you have the financial implications yet of the hiring freeze?
So I do have a vacancy list, but I have to put it in a format that's easily, it's got too much information on it. And I'll have to see how to get it into a form that I can give it to you. And so what is it you're looking for? You mean a list?
Well, a dollar amount. A dollar amount.
So I can only give you the positions that are currently vacant. I cannot give you a dollar amount because the resolution that you created says a hiring freeze is going to save us this amount of money. And I cannot tell you that because based on the exceptions to that, there are several exceptions, plus there's a caveat that says that critical positions would be allowed to be filled. So I can't give you that dollar amount. There's just no way. And my thoughts is seeing all of the things that were exempted, it would not, your clause said a dollar amount with the millions, and it would not reach $1 million. But I can't say what it would be because of the caveats involved and how many positions might become vacant during the year. It's not possible to tag a dollar amount onto it.
Okay.
Is there any way to write that without that whereas clause in there?
I'd have to look at it.
We can discuss this tomorrow. I do also want to have the discussion with the city manager because I think he's made a plea to leave this more in the province of management, but we can have that tomorrow. We did have two requests, at least two requests for information. One is the pay schedule, the pay level, and the other was we need to have advice from the city attorney, but then there was a request to look at staff salaries. I'd like to get the advice from the city attorney before we put that on the agenda, but I think we need to advise Michael Lyles that we'll need his help again tomorrow. We'll also need his help to finish the sections 25 and 6 and 7 and 8 in the ordinance, which are legal boilerplate that we've in truth never focused on. Oh, we have another biggie, by the way, which is to approve section 26 tomorrow, which is the property tax rate and the real property tax rate also. So we have some more work to do on Title 26. But Michael, you weren't here early in the meeting when there was a request to see the pay schedule, which Jody advised us hasn't changed since last year. So that's an easy request. But then there was also a request to see salaries by staff, and both city manager Gerald and I thought we'd need to have some conversation with you. I think it's all publicly available information, but we didn't want to tromp on that until we had advice from our city attorney.
In my view, the staff provides can provide you the names of individuals and their grades, and then grades for each of the individuals grades themselves are listed in a separate document. I think all of those are public information, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is all public, and unfortunately from time to time it gets sensationalized in the Capitol. But I think it is something that the Finance Committee needs to look at and have some discussion. I just want to do it in the best way possible. So we really are going to have a lot of business for you tomorrow because we do want to talk about those sections of the ordinance, section 25, 27, and 28. And I think there were some other things where we needed your counsel tomorrow. I don't know what your schedule is, but we'll be happy to get your counsel whenever you're available to us.
Well, I'll be here like I am today and available. I'll be listening and working at the same time. So Takia can let me know if you need me. I'm
right.
trying to do three things at the same time during these meetings because I just can't,
We get it and we appreciate it.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
think, Takia, we start at 10 tomorrow? Yeah, thank you. All right, we've had yes, Sheila. We never can adjourn.
I was going to ask Mr. Lyles if we could set aside some time to work on the legislation for the community caring position. I am thinking, and I'm asking you and Dewan particularly, and Ellie and Fred, if you're going to help us with this, that maybe we wait.
What am I, chopped liver?
No, you're automatically, I'm saying you and Dewan, but then I was adding Fred and Ellie. If we can put off that legislation until after this week, trying to get that legislation together. One of the suggestions has been that we use part of the stimulus money, $101 million that's coming to Anne Arundel County, a portion of which will come to us, that we use part of that money for a position for someone to kind of oversee our issues and addressing the problems like housing, like food, like jobs. And that's tantamount to the social worker position we're talking about. So if that's the case, it's not necessary for us to try to fit it into this budget at this time. And we can wait until this pressure of getting this budget report together is over. I see Jody waving at me, so.
Yeah, so the funding is coming through the CARES Act to us. We are working on ideas on how to spend that, but it's got some caveats attached. And one of them is it has to be directly related to COVID-19. And as of now, it has to be spent before December 30th, 2020. So any kind of permanent addition of staff, that kind of thing, that would be difficult to fund at that source. Now,
well, I am aware of those.
Okay.
And initially, I've been thinking that this would be a contract position until we get our sea legs under us, and then to make it a permanent position. But in my mind, this is a way we can get this position. We can definitely justify that it's COVID-19 related, no question, okay? And we would be able to do it within the timeline that the feds are giving us.
Okay.
So I've thought about,
Sheila, I love it. I love it when you talk sailor.
Yeah.
got to throw that in because I know your ears will perk up when you hear that. So anyway,
right.
Guys, are you guys comfortable not trying to get this rushed this week?
I am.
After we get the budget report done, then I can sit down, virtually with Mr. Lyles and see how we can craft this, because we'll have to present it to the county. They are going to control our funds. But I've already had a discussion over a week ago with the mayor about this. And I've discussed it with a couple of other people who are kind of in the know. So.
And we have the votes, I think.
Yeah, I hope so.
Just a quick.
Alderwoman Finlayson, just real quick before we close out that one. So we're putting together the list and we're hoping to finish it this week. So if we could just get a placeholder for that position and get that into the list of things that we're going to send to the county with our justification for the money that we need, that would be great.
So you
we
need
can work out the details later, but we want to get the list to the county this week if possible. So we just need to put a placeholder in there.
Do you need a description or just a title or?
As much as you can provide. We don't need a whole thesis on it, but just a short description, a paragraph with the funding amount.
I'll work on it.
Sheila, just to give you some food for thought, with the caveat and all, is that I would argue that the social inequities that were triggered by by COVID-19, right? Just yeah. I'm giving you that for your writing.
Yeah, and taking the notes, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And I loved your idea of filling that with someone who has a background in some sort of social work or something. Because right in line with what Ellie said, we're also looking at now on a larger scale, the underlying condition that it has for people's mental health. So, yeah.
And Duan didn't tell us, but he's also going back to get a degree in social work so he can apply for this job too.
Hey, any of these jobs that paying with job paying, I'm down for.
All right. I'm hungry. Can we adjourn, please? By the way, thank you, Ellie and Duan, for joining us. It's very helpful, and I hope it's helpful to you too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, anytime.
I think Fred made the motion. I'll second it.
All those in favor signify by saying aye before anyone else can get anything in, Joyce.
Aye.
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 Everybody's voting.
Be safe.